With regard to offshore wind energy, the governor has proposed 9,000 megawatts of wind energy by the year 2030, and we are in the beginning of that process. The first project is the Deepwater project, which is 130 megawatts off of Montauk. In addition, the state has recently finalized contracts for roughly another 1,700 megawatts for two projects. One of those projects also is off of Montauk. The other one is further west. And from my perspective, wind energy, and particularly offshore wind energy, is going to be a critical part of our energy portfolio for the state of New York and for Long Island. We have no question that climate change is real. In fact, it is happening now. It is not something that's in the future. It's happening now. And we need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and replace it with renewable energy, including solar, including wind energy. And these projects that are being proposed, I think, are the first steps towards that changeover, that transformation from a fossil fuel-based energy economy that we have here in New York State to one that is renewable. The issues that come up is that the devils are in the details, and each of these projects are large. They have impacts. They have impacts in the ocean. They have impacts, land-based impacts, whether it be transmission lines and substations. And that requires us, I think, to take a careful look at each and every one of these projects, because while the overall concept of renewable energy and wind energy in particular is of critical importance, we need to make sure that each project mitigates and avoids any adverse impacts, whether it be to the commercial fishing industry or to local communities with regard to rather substantial industrial-based infrastructure. So that's where we are in the process right now. So we're looking at each of these individual projects, and I view my role as an elected official to be more of an umpire than a cheerleader, to represent my community, to identify those impacts, and to hold these energy companies hold their feet to the fire to make sure that they mitigate any potential impacts to our communities, whether it be Montauk or Wainscott or East Hampton. We've spent literally millions and millions of dollars protecting community character, and we want to make sure that these projects, these important projects, are consistent with the community character that we've worked so hard to protect.
So there's no doubt we're in the middle of a climate crisis, and to fight climate change we really need transformative change at a large scale, and we need that change to happen as quickly as possible. So we must make sure that we're advancing towards clean energy at the scale we need at a really rapid pace. And NRDC's research has shown that offshore wind power is an essential part of that clean energy mix. So we believe that offshore wind energy can and must be advanced in an environmentally responsible way. And to help guide this research, NRDC, with a number of other environmental organizations, has developed what we're terming a best management practice guide, which is called Harnessing the Wind. And best management practices are essentially science-based measures that help developers avoid, minimize, and mitigate any potential impacts to marine life and marine mammals from offshore wind development. So for example, one measure could be to reduce the impacts of underwater noise. So offshore wind development often involves hammering large turbines into the seabed, and that creates a lot of noise that disturbs marine mammals and other marine life. So we provide guidance on how to minimize those potential impacts. Also reducing the risk of vessel collisions by minimizing vessel speeds, and thinking a little bit about siting of where the turbines are in relation to birds and bats to reduce collision risk. So So one species that we're particularly concerned about is the North Atlantic right whale, which is an iconic species for the US East Coast, but unfortunately is also critically endangered. There are only about 400 individuals left at the moment, and only 95 of those are breeding females. So they've been suffering a really severe decline over the last few years, largely due to entanglement in fishing gear and also ship strikes. And so it's really important that when offshore wind energy is developed, it's done so in a way that minimizes any potential additional stresses. So in a nutshell, there's no doubt that climate change is the greatest threat facing marine mammals, marine life, and also coastal communities in the long term. So we really must make sure that we, build clean energy at the scale we need as quickly as we can to fight the worst effects of climate change. Fortunately, offshore wind energy can be developed in a way that's protective of marine life.
When we talk about offshore wind or renewables in general, the first thing that comes to my mind is that we have a climate emergency now, which we have to address. We have all the tools in our toolbox to transition to 100% renewable energy. We need to do that. We can do it, and in fact, we must do it. So offshore wind is one of those tools. It allows us to tap into the vast energy potential that we have right here off our shores on Long Island on the Atlantic side, a tremendous resource, and with modern wind turbine technology, we can turn that into clean, renewable, and local power, local electricity source that doesn't emit air pollutants, that doesn't contribute to climate change, and it's a great opportunity for us. Yeah, so the pros and cons of renewables in general, or wind power and offshore wind power. There are obvious benefits, of course, which is that it's an environmentally friendly power source. It doesn't pollute the air. It doesn't contribute to climate change. But there are downsides also, as with anything. So one major downside of renewable energy technology is typically that it takes up more space, and that means that you can see it in some cases. And some people are not used to seeing their sources of electricity. We don't when we plug a toaster into our outlet at home to make toast, we don't think about the consequences of that. We don't really see what's happening, what has to happen in order to do that, in order to allow us to make toast. So we don't think and we don't see that there are mountaintops in Appalachia that are being removed in order to get coal to generate power. We don't see that there's destruction in ecosystems in places where they drill for gas. We don't see the smoke coming out of the power plant right here on Long Island. We don't see the Northport power plant. We don't see the Port Jefferson power plant. We don't see what it takes to deliver that electricity, and we don't see the destruction and the harm that it causes, whether it's health effects or the impacts of climate change. So with renewable power, we see the solar panels that are on people's homes. We see solar panels when we build a solar farm with wind turbines on land. We see those big towers and those blades spinning. With offshore wind, the good news is most of us don't see it because it's far offshore now. So the project here on the South Fork is more than 30 miles off of Montauk. You cannot see it. It's over the horizon. You'd have to get on a boat to go and see it. So the pros and cons, I would say the pros far outweigh the cons when it comes to offshore wind energy or other renewable energy sources. But it's also something that is new. It's something that we're not used to, and it's something that requires a change of thinking. And change is hard for all of us. And so I understand that people have a lot of questions, and many of those questions are very legitimate questions and need answers. And I understand that people are sometimes apprehensive about changing the status quo.